Hi everybody, welcome back to the Movie Madness channel. Great to have you back again today with me for this exciting video. I have never done anything like this before. So, just to clarify, for silly Halloween season and the build up to the big day, I have watched the entire Halloween franchise from end to end. And today what I want to do is review the first 12 entries in the franchise. The latest 13th entry, directed by David Gordon Green, Halloween Ends. My review, which I wrote a few days ago, is in the link in the description below. Please have a look at that and get involved in my Movie Madness Facebook group. I'd love to have you with us, and I'd love to have you with the community to talk about all sorts of stuff around the genre. So, great to have you here. What am I doing today? Today I'm going to review 12 films in 12 minutes. That's the task. Never done anything like this before. I've only ever reviewed one at a time, either in print or obviously in a video. So let's see how we get on here, and let's see if I can do it. So 12 films, 12 minutes. Start the clock and let's go. Number one, Halloween 1978. The original, the classic, the iconic, and absolutely by far and away the best of the entire franchise. And I'm including Halloween Ends in that as well. Writer-director John Carpenter, in collaboration with his director of photography, Dean Cundey, they create this atmospheric masterpiece using all sorts of tracking shots and peripheral vision and misdirection to genuinely settle and scare without any blood at all. That was a very clear mandate that was made during production. The cast is uniformly excellent. The young actors are given dialogue that feels realistic, and that's very much aided by the co-screenwriter with John Carpenter, Deborah Hill, and it adds to the impact as the body count rises. Donald Pleasence is excellent as Dr. Loomis, which he would of course reprise many, many times, and Michael Myers, or the Shape as he is here, is this deliciously ambiguous portrayal of evil that we don't really understand, and that is something that obviously would be filled in quite a lot as the sequels unfolded, but it's not necessary, and that's why it works. So for me, very easily a solid 10 out of 10. Number two, Halloween 2, 1981, produced by John Carpenter, directed by Rick Rosenthal, from a script by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill again. This film takes place immediately after the first one, so on the same timeline, and takes place in the hospital where Laurie Strode is admitted following the attacks of the previous movie. It adds, interestingly and notoriously, a key motivational backstory element to Michael Myers that was conveniently missing from the first film and would continue in many or all of the subsequent sequels until the Gordon Green reboot. So Donald Pleasence is back as Loomis to try and save the day. There's a higher focus in this film, certainly on the visually inventive kills, and it at points feels a little bit like a lighter version of Friday the 13th, and it slips into that territory. And that, for me, prevents it from standing at a peer level with the original. But it is entertaining. It is certainly, at moments and at key points, very unsettling to watch. So it does have a tonal link back to the original, and it certainly feels like a good sequel to watch back to back with the first. Just a very important point I want to make, which is that this film can be watched in isolation with the first, and then effectively that's the end of the Maya storyline, and that was always the intention, and actually arguably probably should have been carried through. For me, it's a 7 out of 10. Number three, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, from 1982, produced by John Carpenter and directed by Tommy Lee Wallace. Season of the Witch is a completely standalone story. It doesn't feature Michael Myers, and it doesn't reference the previous two films at all. Instead, this film focuses on a mysterious death and an investigation into a mysterious manufacturer of Halloween masks called Silver Shamrock. This third film was actually intended to launch a series of individual anthology type stories, all taking place around Halloween. That was Carpenter's original intention, but because Michael Myers was such a central part of the films already, audiences didn't respond well to him not being in it, and essentially abandoned this movie, so it was officially derided and not well received at all, and that effectively meant that the concept that Carpenter had was scrapped. Season of the Witch on its own, however, is a great film, and it stands alone on its own merits. It has a terrifying central conceit, and it has a genuinely unsettling ending, which I've always had a soft spot for. It was the first Halloween film I ever watched. So for me, 7 out of 10. Number four, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, 1988. Myers is now brought back from the dead and effectively becomes the man who can't be killed because he just can't. This film, directed by Dwight H. Little, links with the next two entries, so 4, 5 and 6 have a causal and a common link, which is the character of Jamie Lloyd, who is introduced in the first 5 to 10 minutes as Laurie Strode's daughter, so effectively Michael Myers' niece. So you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out that the whole purpose of this film is, once Myers discovers this, he of course then has to pay every single person that she cares about a visit, and that effectively is the narrative as it unfolds. We've got Donald Pleasence back as Sam Loomis again. This time his performance feels a little bit more like a caricature rather than actually the same types of performances that he gave in 1 and 2. The bizarre Cult of Thorn narrative, which is woven into 5 and 6 and very much is at the front of 6, is commenced here. The ending is the best bit. Okay, it's still got a little bit of a surprise in there, and Danielle Harris as Jamie Lloyd is excellent in her debut. For the most part, though, this really does look like a cheap knockoff, and the mask, well, less said about that, the better, to be honest with you. 5 out of 10. Number 5, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, 1989. The next movie picks up the story of Jamie Lloyd, who a year later is now in the full-time care of a children's clinic and is regularly visited by Dr. Loomis. Loomis becomes aware of a convenient, shall we say, psychic link between her and the still missing Michael Myers, and as her visions intensify, Loomis becomes convinced that Jamie's gift is the only thing that can stop Myers once and for all. This, frankly, is where the franchise quality begins to slide quite rapidly. Halloween 5 boasts some really questionable directing choices from Dominic Othenin-Girard and a frankly bug-eyed performance from Donald Pleasence that seems completely at odds with his performance in the original. Lacking in scares, threat and tension. Anybody, unfortunately, thinking it couldn't get any worse was wrong. But the only real redeeming feature here is Danielle Lloyd's performance as Jamie again. For me, 3 out of 10. Number 6, Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers from 1995. The cult hinted at since Halloween 4 now comes full circle in this Joe Chappelle directed DTV quality entry that boasts all at once the debut of Paul Rudd, Ant-Man as he would become, and the final film for Donald Pleasence. It was heavily recut after Pleasence's death during production, so there are now 2 versions of this film that exist. The first is the theatrical cut and the second is the producer's cut, which features the original ending, and that had to be removed for reasons that I'll get into in a second. Unfortunately, both of them suffer from the same problems, which is effectively a poor script. It recasts Jamie Lloyd as an adult just in a seemingly convenient way so that she can have a baby that then gets passed around like a parcel for the rest of the running time, while Myers in the background stalks the rest of his bloodline. The Cult of Thorn is an interesting concept, you could argue, but in this particular film it's handled in a really hokey way. Myers has completely lost the ability to scare because he's now being controlled by the cult to do their bidding at pretty much every turn. Paul Rudd is good as the grown-up Tommy Doyle from the original Halloween, but this film is so bad that even he can't save it, and the conclusion of both versions is weak. Pleasence's death made the producer's cut impossible to use as an ending, but it is better than what was released. That's not saying much though. 3 out of 10. Number 7, Halloween H2O from 1998. So Steve Miner brings his by-the-numbers sequel directing skills to this effort, which to me is a bigger budget entry, but still feels like a kind of 90s celebratory mashup, bringing in parts of Final Destination and elements and the gore of Friday the 13th, and then throws in some seasoning of the usual Halloween stock characters to make something that's fun, but ultimately doesn't really do anything other than what it says it will do on the tin, which is fine, but doesn't really move things forward in any way that's surprising. It's of course very well known for bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode and also giving them a supposedly final confrontation, which ultimately with Halloween Ends would prove not to be the case at all. I also particularly enjoyed the moment with Janet Leigh where she appears in the film, and there's a sting from Psycho in there, which is really nice. So it's a fun movie, but nothing else. 6 out of 10. Number 8, Halloween Resurrection from 2002. Okay, so this is a direct sequel to H2O. It's almost the worst of the sequels. Rick Rosenthal, who directed Halloween 2, is brought back and delivers a hollow film that lacks scares and almost any sense of a narrative, actually, at all. The previous H2O ending is completely undermined and explained away in a ridiculous opening sequence, and the whole film is just littered with gimmicks and things like web streaming and found footage. You can feel it's almost put together by committee at points. It just falls flat. It makes it look dated as well now, I would suggest, and that doesn't really sit well with the rest of the franchise either. However, what I would say is if you want to see Busta Rhymes fighting Michael Myers in what is actually an unintentionally hilarious mock kung fu battle, then this is the film for you without a doubt. For me, 1.5 out of 10. Number 9, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2007. Well, it tries something new, at least. I mean, this is typical Rob Zombie fare. It's grungy, it's dark, it's incredibly visceral and violent, and of course it ends with his signature chase through a dark horror labyrinth as per House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects and 31 and everything else he's done. The reinvented adult Myers is genuinely terrifying. I mean, he's huge and he's genuinely terrifying. Zombie's got some good performances from a list of genre veterans, including the likes of Ken Foree from Dawn of the Dead. But painting the whole grim interpretation of Michael Myers' backstory in the first 25 minutes, to me, that's unnecessary. And what it does is it fills in all the gaps, and he arguably gives Michael more sympathy than he actually deserves. Malcolm McDowell as the new Dr. Loomis acquits himself well as usual, but it's not as good as perhaps it should be or could be. For me, 6 out of 10. Number 10, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 from 2009. Okay, this is unquestionably the worst of the franchise, teamed with ridiculous dream sequences, irrelevant visions, over-the-top gore, and a horrible script, what there is of it. It replaces any scares with this assault of endless screaming and destruction. Sherry Moon Zombie reprises her previous role as Michael's dead mother, appearing at random, all dressed in white and bathed in light and accompanied by a white horse, for seemingly no apparent reason, which just summarises how perfectly bonkers this film is. Loomis has become despicable and annoyingly pointless. He's got no narrative purpose at all. And the one thing that really got me was the overuse of slow motion edits, and it's just lazy. It looks like it was actually pieced together by the same monkey that pieced together Halloween 6 when they recut it. Frankly, the less said about the ending, the better, and it's truly awful. It feels unfinished and half-baked in almost every respect. All I will say is at least Halloween Resurrections didn't try and take itself seriously. 0.5 out of 10. Number 11, Halloween 2018. David Gordon Green now resets the timeline and ignores all the previous sequels to pick up from the original 40 years on, so the same story, bringing back John Carpenter and Jamie Lee Curtis as executive producers at the same time, which is frankly a good move. Strode is now a survivor with PTSD. She's living a half existence in an isolated self-made fortress. Her relationships with both her daughter and her granddaughter are strained, and then a pair of podcast journalists turn up and a transfer to a new prison goes horribly wrong, and of course Myers is back on the hunt for the one that got away, as you would expect. Having said that, it's tight, it's taut, it's a worthy successor, I think, to the original, and it's arguably the best sequel as well. Carpenter's score and Curtis's performances are excellent, with the direction by Gordon Green's a really unsettling creation. He's done very well. It's certainly gorier than the original, but for that reason alone and the way that he manages to create something that's genuinely unsettling, that makes it a really, really great film. It's finally the case that we can say I have a worthy successor to the original. 9 out of 10, and my longer review is in the link below. Number 12, Halloween Kills from 2021. So David Gordon Green is back again with a direct sequel to the previous film that, again, like the original Halloween 2, carries on the same timeline, so takes place in the same night, but again takes place in the hospital predominantly. For me, this was a huge misstep for David Gordon Green. I felt that the film itself seemed to lack all the tension and all of the scares from the previous movie, focusing predominantly on the kills and the gore, and the mob ending, so the way that it concludes when it leads through to essentially a group of survivors, including Tommy Doyle, taking up arms to fight Michael en masse. I felt that was a huge mistake. It didn't feel right, and the way that the whole film concluded for me was a complete mess. So I'm afraid to say, for me, I would give this film 5 out of 10. And that's it. So 12 films in near enough 12 minutes. Not too bad, I don't think. That was fun. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please come back and check out my channel again soon. I'll be posting more video reviews, and of course also please join my Facebook page, again link below, Movie Madness on Facebook. I'd love to have your company, love to have you involved in the community that we're building. And thank you very much for tuning in. See you again soon, and have a wonderful day and enjoy Halloween. Cheers. Take care. Bye bye.